feel like every few years, rumors start up that the Lloyd Center is shutting down. At one point, this 63-year-old mall was one of the largest shopping centers in the country. But by 2020, nearly every major department store had bailed. Local news has been predicting its death for a while now.
At noon, Macy's at the Lloyd Center is permanently closing. The closure was announced this morning, saying they will be closed by January 31st.
Now to some big news about an iconic Portland mall. The Lloyd Center is facing foreclosure, and it may soon.
But in spite of all that, sometime last year, a new buzz began growing around the space, and people started to affectionately refer to it as the punk rock mall. Local vendors started opening smaller, more eclectic pop-up shops, everything from homemade clothing stores to record shops or communal gaming spaces. Local bands began playing, parties were getting thrown. TikToks about secret roller disco events at the empty Marshalls were being shared. How is the Lloyd Center still alive? Who and what is making this all happen? And how long will it last? Today on CityCast Portland, audio producer Giulia Fiaoni and I take our mics to the mall to look for answers. So get in, losers, we're going shopping. It's Wednesday, April 5th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Okay, so one of the first people Giulia and I met up with was Salvador Ibarra, who works at Euphoria. That's one of the 2 tattoo shops located inside the mall. Salvador has a long history with the Lloyd Center, so we figured, he'd get us started on the right path. Salvador, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us. You used to work at the old movie theater that was inside the mall, and now you're a tattoo artist working at that same mall. How does it feel coming back to your old stomping grounds?
It was really bizarre to come full circle. I realized it. I was young, but I was not a teenager. I was early 20s. Okay. And I had just moved to Portland, and a friend of a friend was doing exit poll researches.
Oh,
just
yeah, I remember that.
gathering data after the movie at the Lloyd Center.
And in the 90s, so that was like...
In the 90s,
That was kind of like almost the crest of like peak mall culture, or do you think at that time it was like coming down a little?
I think it had not yet even plateaued. I think it was still rising. Yeah, wow. But through all of my travels and life experiences and living in other states, living on an island in the Pacific Northwest, somehow I found myself back at the Lloyd Center. It was humorous to me.
There was a period where people didn't think that the Lloyd Center was going to make it. I mean, like at first it was because everyone was shopping online, and then came the pandemic, which could have been that final nail on its coffin. But here it stands. So can you explain the new rebirth since you're a part of it?
Well, it's interesting. It's like when people say like shag haircuts are back. They never went away.
Yeah.
Hot pants are back. They never went away. Roller skating, hula hoop, it never went away. It just wasn't as mainstream. Mm-hmm. And I feel that way about the mall and malls in general. For the last 5 or 6 years, people have been saying they're going to shut it down at any time. That whole it's dying, it's going to be dead. Mm-hmm. Yes. But then every year you keep hearing the same thing, but that implies that, well, no, it hasn't died. If you keep saying it's going to, it's surviving. And I noticed that the space is definitely used differently. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of major department stores empty.
Yeah, like we're standing in front of a very empty Marshalls right now. Yeah.
Which now is being repurposed as a warming center for people experiencing crisis on freezing cold days. Mm-hmm. So it's still being used, but it's not a retail space. And so what you start seeing now is really independent, quirky, avant-garde kind of stores popping up that are definitely suited to a very specific consumer. And I kind of like that. Instead of being a mega department store that is 3 stories that has a little bit of something for everyone, these are stores that are curated.
As we walked here to this location, we passed a comic book store, we passed a record store, and then we passed what looked to be like a Lego store, but it was not branded. And it was just this man clearly just enjoying his life surrounded by Legos.
And it's a lot of very one specific thing for a specific target. And I like that.
Yeah,
and that's part of the regrowth.
This Lego store I mentioned to Salvador is called Brickdiculous. But what I didn't mention was that I'm a pretty huge Lego nerd and had already met with the store's owner, James Lucas Jones. And his Lego shop is right next to Floating World Comics, an institution in the Portland indie comic book scene. And before their move to the Lloyd Center last year, Floating World Comics had been in Old Town for nearly 2 decades. So their move to the mall was a pretty big deal. It was legitimizing the space in a way. And when I asked James why he decided to open up his shop at the mall, he said this.
I used to work in comic book publishing, and I've known the owner of Floating World, our next door neighbor, for a number of years. And just in talking with Jason, Floating World had been previously located in Old Town Chinatown, and he moved over in August, and just the response that he'd gotten from the move and just the difference in vibe that he's been able to create was just infectious. And so it started talking with him and started talking with mall management. We were able to come to terms on a lease, and that was at the end of September, and we opened like 6 weeks later.
Could you give us like a little tour of your store?
Yeah, so we carry a lot of vintage, like still in box, but out of print Lego, from everywhere from the last 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years plus, and then a huge selection of new stuff, and then a lot of custom minifigures and fan-created content.
Tell me about this bulk Lego section, because this is just really cool.
Yeah, we have our bulk section where it's just a place for folks to come and fill bags of Lego brick and elements that they need. They can kind of be picky and pick out things for certain builds, or kids can just grab by the handful. And then on Sundays we also have a thing where whatever they build they can buy based on how much it weighs. So it's an affordable way for kids to come in. And everything with Lego these days is so geared around sets and specific models. Like having an opportunity for kids to come in and just play and use their own imaginations in terms of builds is something that we really wanted to do. So
now, James's shop is well-stocked and does sell merchandise, but it's also part museum and part gallery with a healthy dose of clubhouse. And there's a heavy DIY vibe that makes you feel like you're not just buying stuff, you're also taking an active part in a very niche culture, which to me, it feels pretty punk rock. So I asked Salvador what he thought about people starting to call the Lloyd Center the punk rock mall.
I see why that would be a good term for it, because again, it's breaking away from the norm. Because punk rock at its base, it goes against the status quo. And it says that what you're doing as an individual, even though it's not in the mainstream, it has as equal, if not more value because of that. Mm-hmm. And so, you don't necessarily see like a Sam Goody or a Tower Records. You see a tiny little privately owned record store. Yeah. But what you're going to find in there is going to be so much more unique and worthwhile. Definitely. So I definitely see that punk rock moniker, and also because it's kind of gritty.
Yeah, I mean, we're literally listening to a tattoo needle in the background right now.
Yes,
like as you were talking, now you're hearing this tattoo needle going off.
Yes.
What are you seeing in terms of clientele? Like, who is coming to the mall?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of younger people. I'm seeing a lot more people of color. I'm seeing black and brown kids hanging out, doing things, shopping, having fun, getting tattoos, getting piercings, but also picking up like fresh new sneakers, which I don't necessarily remember from before. I like that there's, for Portland standards, a much more diverse clientele that you see in the mall. And I like that it's young.
Yeah.
So that brings a different energy to it. Because of some of the open, empty spaces and a more lax approach by security, you see kids skateboarding here. Mm-hmm. And why wouldn't you want to skate here?
It's really cool.
It's really neat. There's lots of things to skate.
Inside the mall?
In the mall.
So
not just outside it, but inside it, because there's stairs and it's not raining.
That's so cool. So you've seen.
Oh, absolutely. And you can hear it because, the board hitting the floor, it just resounding, it echoes through the mall.
Right.
And it's very distinctive the way a skateboard sounds when it slaps against the ground.
So in a way, the mall has become a community center for some kids maybe who
Absolutely.
want to go somewhere, stay dry, and do something fun.
And I think that's a good word for it, because I've often, to myself said, well, it's evolving. It's now providing different things. Okay, so the 3-story Macy's is closed, but now the big chunk of space in front of it in the food court is open for kids to gather and play Dungeons and Dragons or a card game.
And that's what's happening.
Exactly. Or to
That's-
charge
yeah.
all their devices while they're waiting to go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I realized that just like, you and I, probably there was a mall when we were teenagers we went to for a while. It was part of our coming of age, learning these social skills, amongst other people. These kids were probably still doing that or looking forward to doing it when they were 8 and 9, coming here with their 14 or 15-year-old brothers and sisters. And they were hoping for the same experience, but internet shopping, online shopping, at home shopping, the pandemic,
Yeah.
economic downturns, quasi-recession, all of that took a lot of it away from them. But I like that they're still coming. And that's so significant, because if this is part of youth culture, then they should be able to enjoy it, even though it's a little bit different than when you and I may have done it. And
Well, it's less commercial.
but
It
it's
actually
still-
does feel more like a rec center, to be honest.
Yes.
Oh,
call it what it
there's
is.
a
Yes.
palpable, like, hey, I'm just going to hang out here and
Rec
I
and
feel
community
safe.
center.
Yeah. The reason I asked, like, has a demo changed was because I wanted a confirmation
Yes.
that I was seeing what I was seeing. Because as I was walking in
Absolutely.
from the parking lot, I just saw a lot of, like, black and brown families come through. And I
Yes.
was like, oh, okay. And I don't remember seeing that or feeling that.
No.
Like most Portland spaces, the Lloyd Center still felt very white,
It did up until just about 4 or 5 years ago.
which is interesting.
It certainly
I mean, I'm
is.
still seeing a lot of like white older folks walking around.
Oh, yes.
you know,
And you do see a lot of
in jogging
the
suits,
quintessential mall
which
walkers.
is amazing.
The
Yeah.
mall walkers from the 90s.
Yeah.
Because it's climate controlled, it's safe, it's carpet.
We're gonna take a quick break here, and when we come back, how long is this all going to last? Is the Lloyd Center's punk rock mall era just a phase? Do you think that this DIY punk era phase of the mall is just a phase? Or, I mean, I know that you're not part of the management team and that you can't predict what's going to happen, but from being a vendor here, what's the feeling you're getting from talking to management or other vendors?
I think it is definitely intentional. I would say that that's part of the business plan of the new mall ownership. Just recently, the mall changed hands. Large groups, moneyed interest, loans not being repaid, people buying debt, and, diggy-doo, here we are. There's a new mall owner. But these owners and their management team, they have a completely different approach. They are actively encouraging the DIY, punk aesthetic, the riot girl, whatever you want to call it, the outsider movement, and actively courting people who traditionally might not have a shop, which is why you see such a diversity of spaces that are not necessarily chain corporate stores.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because the mall wants those people to come in, and they entice them by giving them amazing rent rates. I haven't asked for specific numbers, but everyone I've talked to said, oh, I couldn't say no.
And did they say they were being courted? Is that why? Like, that's why they're here?
When they had spoken to, like, this is what I want to do, the mall said, yes, we'll work with you. We want this. We want more
gotcha.
we want pop-up type stores.
Yeah. So I had reached out to Lloyd Center management to confirm what their larger plan was with the space. My concern was that at any point, it could just be taken away. I also wanted to trace back how this regrowth, as Salvador put it, all started. If it happened like he said it did, then the new owners were the masterminds. I mean, the pop-up shops did sprout once they took over in 2021. Or did this all come from word of mouth, where existing vendors were convincing others to open up shops, like how James from Brickdiculous got roped in? But all my questions went unanswered, officially anyway, because aside from a very friendly conversation with their PR firm, Lloyd management did not respond. So I laid this all out to Salvador.
I think whether it was intentional or not by upper management, maybe they didn't see these type of business owners coming in, but they definitely laid a very fertile groundwork for it to grow and flourish. So whether by intention or not, the end result is still very interesting. And you see stores that you wouldn't see at most other malls.
At this point, audio producer Giulia and I took a much-deserved pretzel break. Honestly, I was feeling a bit defeated, thinking our investigation was stopping right here at Auntie Annie's. But as I was scrolling through Instagram in between bites, I came across a story from Dream Street, one of the new pop-ups at the mall selling DIY boutique clothing. It's co-owned by a friend of mine, Eric Mast, and he's been a constant force in Portland's art and music scenes for ages now. And one of his projects, Spoiler Room, organizes social events that bring art, music, and culture to unexpected places. Then these events are streamed as TV episodes on cable access. And then I remembered that Eric, along with Dane, another member of Spoiler Room, had been throwing parties and broadcasting DJ performances from the mall for the past year, specifically from Dream Street and Music Plastique, a post-punk electronic record store at the mall.
This is Spoiler Room with special guest, Sweet Baby James, recorded at Dream Street, with artwork by Manu Torres.
The more I thought about it, the more it made sense that Eric and Dane might have something to do with all this. Could the punk rock mall be the longest Spoiler Room event yet? I slapped a sweet almond pretzel out of Giulia's hand and told her we were going to Dream Street to confront Eric with this information. So my investigation was that you guys started this. You guys started this whole movement, but you're saying, no, there was someone before you. I'd love to hear this story.
Okay. Yeah, so Tony from Music Plastique had moved in, and Dane was kind of moving in with him, and he was like, oh, it'll be a Spoiler Room space also.
You said it was like a lark in a sense, that you didn't think it was going to last as long as what's going on. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dane and Tony, they were kind of just doing it because there wasn't a lot of other options that were positive at the time. But also, Dane just thought it was just like, it'll be funny, you should do it, you know. But then once they got here, they were like, oh, the people here are really nice, and like the space is interesting, and like it was kind of rad. We were kind of expecting like a post-apocalyptic kind of vibe, but we were getting more of a utopian vibe. So then I'd been, hanging out with those guys at the space, and then I just decided, I was like, oh, maybe I'll do a space. And so I kind of just sent a proposal to somebody at the mall, and then ended up signing a year lease. And then right after that, Jason Floating World decided to move from downtown to the mall.
I love the space. I love that you have like the equipment to make t-shirts in the back, and you have like all the paints. That's what I'm really enjoying about these stores, is that it's part like welcome to my room. Like, look at my cool shit. You can't buy it, but look, isn't this cool? And I fucking love that. Like, I really love that spirit of like, this is my space. You're coming into it. Here's the stuff that's for sale. That was a Lego store. There were like Legos in glass cases.
Yeah.
You think you're gonna keep it open?
Well, I signed a year lease, so I'm just planning on doing a year, and then I'll figure out what happens after that. But who knows?
Well, cool. I mean, that's pretty much what I wanted. I mean, I guess if we want to do our due diligence, we'd go to Music Plastique and stuff. But like, whatever, we're good. We've had our fucking like pretzel. I feel like we're done. We were done. At least I was. But knowing Eric was not quite sure if he was going to renew his lease made me a little sad. I really don't want the punk rock mall experiment to end in any way. And I don't think I'm alone in this. Before we left, I had asked Salvador if he was able to write the future of the Lloyd Center, what would that look like? And he said this.
I am a big believer in progressive social politics. I think that the ultimate responsibility of the state is to look after the health and well-being of the citizens. So I like that the mall is using really large empty department stores to provide people with a place to go so they won't freeze to death. I had heard rumors that on the third floor of the mall, they want to potentially make them into spaces for professionals, counselors, therapists, maybe people who produce podcasts.
Oh, I would hope so.
Absolutely. Attorneys, things of this nature.
Yeah.
But also housing, where possibly one part of it is market rate housing, where Whereas on the other side of the building, perhaps it's low-income housing or restricted income or income-based housing.
How cool would it be to live inside a mall?
It would be kind
it
of interesting.
It would be really weird.
Absolutely.
It would feel like a post-apocalyptic 80s movie.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
but
'cause
aren't those the best ones?
Everyone runs to the mall for
Yes,
safety.
absolutely.
Oh, my gosh.
All the resources are there.
Give us your best pitch. People listening, this is your 30-second spot for them to come to the mall. Go.
This mall has been here a long time. You have fond memories of it, and you're still capable of building new memories here. There are still a variety of stores open. People come here every day to make a living for themselves and their families, and it would be helpful to them and the mall in general for it to just remain healthy. And the more people that come to see it and support it now, the more likely that people will want to open new businesses.
And it's fun. That's what
And there's an ice skating rink. Give me a break.
Yeah, and you'll have a good time. I'm sorry. I mean, I understand. You're not in marketing.
Yeah.
We're working this out together.
Yeah.
Cool.
It'll
Thank
be
you.
fantastic.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. If you enjoyed this show, why not tell a friend, rate it, leave us a review. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.